Okay, so this game gets a lot of hate from people, especially fans of Episode 1. Does it deserve this hate though? Let's find out as I look back on 2004's Xenosaga Episode 2, Xenosaga von Gut an Boys. With any executives to terminate the project, Xenosaga Episode 2 would go straight ahead following the release of Episode 1. With his growing workload as president of Monolithsoft, Tetsuya Takahashi would step down as director from Xenosaga, giving the role over to his colleague, Ko Arai, who would go on to direct Episode 3 as well. Along with a change in director, other roles would be switched around to give newer staff members a chance to handle the series. This draft restructure would also coincide with a change in the 6-part Xenosaga series to make it a 3-part trilogy, with room for additional games pending the series' success. As a result of all this restructuring, Episode 2 would see a lot of changes in-game from what Episode 1 had established, most notably in the battle system and character designs. Kunihiko Tanaka would not return, and his character designs would be redone to fit a more realistic art style, which is what the development team wanted. Meanwhile, secondary character and mech designer Koichi Mijutani would return and would keep the look of the support cast relatively similar to their previous looks. Mijutani would also design the new mechs, known as ES units, which I must add are some of my favourite mech designs ever. Despite no longer directing, Tetsuya Takahashi would still write the script for the game, along with his wife Kaori Tanaka. However, this would be the last main series Xeno game she would work on in any substantial amount. The script would be heavily edited by the game's staff in order to make it into a workable game, which did unfortunately result in major changes to the overall Xenosaga storyline, thus affecting future entries. Xenosaga Episode 2 would be announced for the PS2 along with the North American release of Episode 1 in mid-2003. Its subtitle, Xenosaga von Gut an Boys, or Beyond Good and Evil, was taken from the multi-platform title releasing later that year. Just kidding, it was yet again another book by Friedrich Nietzsche. The subtitle was chosen to reflect on the moral greyness of the decisions made by the game's protagonist and antagonists. In the West, publisher Namco would team up with Sony to release Episode 2 in the PAL regions. This would be the first time a Xeno game would be released there. To account for the fact that Episode 1 wasn't released in Europe and Australia, the PAL copy would come with a DVD detailing the events of Episode 1. Would have preferred the full game though. Episode 2's story decides to shift the focus away from Shion and Cosmos and instead focus on the URTV Jr. and his relation to the Realian Momo and his antagonistic brother Albedo. The story starts 14 years in the past during the Miltian conflict, where we meet the Realian Kanan, who has been tasked with rescuing the biological weapons known as URTVs who are trapped on the planet's surface. Helping Kanan is... wait, that's Chaos? What the hell happened to him? Anyway, the two pilot the ES Asher down to the planet's surface where they meet Jin Uzuki, Shion's older brother, who was on a covert mission investigating the true cause behind the Miltian conflict. The trio then encounter Commander Margulis, who turns out to have a history with Jin, and the two engage in a sword fight, which Jin wins, barely. Jin then hands Kanan the Y-Data, a collection of critical data on the true cause behind the war, developed by deceased scientist Joachim Mizrahi. Kanan then downloads the data into his head for safekeeping. The story then jumps to the present day on Second Miltia, where Kanan is attempting to have the Y-Data extracted to no avail. Meanwhile, Shion and the rest of the now hideous-looking cast are coming into landing at the nearby spaceport after the climatic events of Episode 1. At the spaceport, the group split up with Shion, Alan and Cosmos making their way to the Vector branch on Second Miltia, while Junior, Chaos and Ziggy escort Momo, who has a copy of the Y-Data. While leaving the spaceport, the four are ambushed by Margulis' men who attempt to capture Momo. The four then make a run for it, and are eventually rescued by Kanan using the ES Asher. Seeing the Asher, Junior reminisces back to his rescue by Kanan and Chaos 14 years ago on Old Miltia. Meanwhile, Shion and Alan get a debriefing at Vector on the growing Gnosis threat, and the new upgrades Cosmos will be receiving. Reluctantly, Shion hands over Cosmos to the development team, then heads into the city to visit a local restaurant she used to frequent. At the restaurant, Shion runs into Junior and Chaos, who get into a chat when Jin shows up. Shion seems to loathe meeting Jin and expresses a lot of hostility towards him. The next day, the group arrive at the UMN control center to extract the Y-Data from Momo. During the extraction, it is suddenly revealed that Junior's brother Albedo had put a virus in Momo when he captured her during Episode 1. To prevent Albedo from stealing the Y-Data using the virus, Momo shuts herself down, leaving her unconscious. The others then decide to encephalon dive into Momo's subconscious to save both her and the Y data. Inside Momo's subconscious, the group see the past experiences of a young girl named Sakura, who turns out to be the daughter of Joachim Mizrahi, the creator of Momo and the Y data. We find out that Momo was built by Joachim to be a carbon copy of Sakura in both appearances and personality. At the time of the dive, Sakura is suffering from a mysterious illness that is believed to have been caused by Udu, a powerful extra-dimensional existence. As an anti-Udu weapon, a young Junior and the other URTVs have been deployed to Sakura's mind to clear Udu out and hopefully heal her. During the dive, the group begin to learn about Junior's relationship with Sakura, as well as his fellow URTVs, especially Albedo, who they see the beginnings of his spiral into insanity. Upon learning his regeneration powers will prevent him from ever dying, in yet another censored scene. While following young Junior and the other URTVs, the group fall into another trap left by modern-day Albedo, which allows them to enter the encephalon and engage the group. During the fight, Momo's consciousness comes back, and with it, the unprotected Y data, which Albedo steals and escapes with. Now possessing the Y data, Albedo opens up the path to Old Milsha, where the original Zohar lies in rest. Now, the race is on as all the factions around the galaxy rush to Old Milsha to secure the Zohar for themselves, including the main cast. For the full story breakdown, I again recommend checking out the link down below. Despite some big changes to the graphics engine, Episode 2 looks and feels relatively similar to Episode 1. The game still has its relatively linear fashion as well as being cutscene heavy, however the cutscenes are not as dominant as they were back in Episode 1. Segment addresses make their return, along with the destroyable objects mechanic, now supporting some cool character specific animations when blowing up objects. Character animations aren't the only improvement. The environments are now much less claustrophobic than they were in Episode 1, with open forests and cities replacing the interior of spaceships and dock colonies. However, I cannot praise the art style without criticising the elephant in the room, that being the character models and voice actors. I don't think I've met anyone who prefers the new realistic looks to the main characters, nor the new voice actors for Shion, Cosmos and Momo. Another change that has also been criticised is the new class skill tree, which merges skills and ether into a single tree, divided into separate classes with corresponding levels of proficiency. Characters will receive class and skill points in battle, which they can first use to unlock the skill class, and then learn the multiple skills inside it. Having only one skill tree means any character can access any skill, which while great for versatility, also makes the characters less unique in their playstyle. Episode 2 has 7 playable characters, with all 6 of the original cast returning, along with Shion's brother Jin joining the team. The group now have 3 ES units, the Asher, Dinah and Zebulun, which they pilot in pairs, with the pilot fixed to the ES and the co-pilot able to be swapped around. Unlike Gears and Eggs, ES units are piloted in dedicated ES parts of the game, with dedicated points of embarking and disembarking. This does help make the ES units more relevant in the game, however it feels like a cop-out when compared with Xenogears, which naturally pushed mech and foot gameplay without forcing it on the player. Episode 2 is well known as being the shortest of the Xenosaga games, at around 28 hours to finish the main story. Thus, to fill out the game time, Episode 2 introduces the series to side quests, known here as Good Samaritan missions, or GS missions. In GS missions, the player is requested to assist random characters in the game with a myriad of tasks, ranging from delivering a letter to fixing a power station. GS missions unfortunately end up being Episode 2's biggest negative. This is due to their tedious nature, especially when it comes to backtracking. See, a lot of GS missions require you to travel between Second Milsha and the Kukai Foundation, the game's 2 main hubs. However, the game has no fast travel system and thus it will take up to several minutes to get from place to place. This gets annoying real fast, especially when you have missions which require the player to do this trip multiple times. On the bright side, these tasks are optional and for the most part can be ignored in favour of completing the main game. However, you will be depriving yourself of useful unlockable skills as well as being able to use Erde Kaiser from the previous game. For the most part, Episode 2 feels a lot like Episode 1, however this cannot be said when looking at the game's battle system. From an initial glance, things seem the same, with ether attacks and the combo system returning. However, the combo system is now built around the game's zoning system, where attacks are classed as Zone A, B or C attacks. These zones correspond to the enemy's break zones, which must be hit in the correct order to break the enemy's guard. Once an enemy's guard is broken, they can then be knocked into the ground or thrown into the air. Once in this state, the enemy is vulnerable to massive damage, especially from Momo and Shion, who can only perform A-zone attacks. In order to keep the combo going, the player must make use of stocking and boosting. Stocks replace AP, and by stocking, a character can save up to 3 additional attacks. Meanwhile, boosting works much the same as it did in episode 1, however it is now a party gauge as opposed to a character gauge. This helps the gauge feel faster, and it also allows more versatility in deciding who and when to boost. By saving up stocks and continuously boosting, the party can run some pretty long, powerful combos, which can take out some bosses in one go. Boosting and stocking is also necessary to conduct joint attacks, in which 2 characters perform a powerful combo attack at the cost of a boost and a select number of stocks. The event slot also makes its return with additional random effects, including ether strengthening and turn cancelling. Along with this, enemies will again have the power to boost, however their boost gauge is now displayed along with your own, so you know when they can and can't boost. Along with the combo system, characters can now reposition to be in front or behind the enemy, as opposed to the front and back lines like in episode 1. Being behind the enemy is beneficial as it allows your character to do additional damage. The only problem with this mechanic is that it is often not available in fights. Along with their own gameplay sections, ES units also have their own battle system. Unfortunately, it's pretty bare bones. ES units will have a choice between 2 regular attacks and 2 special attacks, with the special attacks requiring stocking in the same manner as foot battles. The second special attack is determined by the ES unit's co-pilot, so there is some skill in deciding who goes in which craft. Along with this, only Zebulun can use Ether, so if you want to access a character's spells, make sure that they are in that craft. Episode 2 is also the only game in the series which makes level up with their own experience, rather than getting equipment upgrades. The battle system is definitely one of the main points of controversy when it comes to Episode 2 versus Episode 1. Personally, I like the new foot battle system for its far more balanced and refined nature. I also like the new boosting system and the guard break system as an expansion of the combo system from just a single character to the whole party. And this more than makes up for the lack of customizable tech attacks and unique ether spells. With Mitsuda stepping down as composer, the task of scoring would fall to 2 individuals, Shinji Hasoe, who did the gameplay music, and Yuki Kajura, who did the music for the cutscenes. Hasoe was an interesting choice as a composer, with his music style of chiptunes and synthesizer, as seen in games like 999, coming across as very out of place when compared with the orchestral themes of Mitsuda and Kajura. Hasoe has gone on record as not being very happy with his work on Episode 2, with his tracks not showing up in the official soundtrack album. This is quite a shame because Episode 2's music direction is leagues better than Episode 1's, with actual music playing in the background and multiple battle themes. Kajuro was also a strange choice as a composer, as she was more well known for her anime soundtracks with later works including Fate Zero, Polymela Madoka Magica, and more recently Demon Slayer. Kajuro brings her usual flair to Episode 2 with heavy use of strings and choirs, and is definitely the better of the 2 scores to listen to, with pieces like Fatal Fight and the opening theme being highlights for me. Kajuro would also compose the game's ending song, Sweet Song, with actress and singer Margaret Dawn supplying the vocals. Kajuro does a great job of incorporating Sweet Song's melody into the game's score as the quote, love theme, and this does a great job of making the tune memorable and it's definitely one of the better Xeno ending songs. As a standalone soundtrack, I don't really listen to Episode 2's music, with Hasoe's music being average and Kajuro delivering a better soundtrack with Episode 3. However, as a game soundtrack, I take this game's variety of mediocre chiptunes over the boring repetitive tracks of Episode 1. I will admit, I find some of Xenosaga Episode 2's choices a bit ironic, with the battle system's attempted simplification making it more complex, and the characters being less expressive despite being redesigned to do the opposite. However, I seriously do not get why this game is hated so much, especially when compared with Episode 1. The battle system's a mess, and Episode 1's wasn't? There's too much backtracking! Right, because Episode 1 totally had none of that. The music is bad! At least we have music and not blank ambient noise. The game should have just been a movie! Remind me which game has a 40-minute cutscene with 2 save points in it? At the end of the day, while I don't think Episode 2 is necessarily a great Xeno game, I generally do believe it to be an improvement from Episode 1, with a more refined battle system and actual in-game music. Episode 2 is genuinely a more enjoyable game to play, as long as you don't attempt to do all the GS missions. Another thing I feel doesn't get talked about enough with this game is how it laid the groundwork to the Xenoblade Chronicles series. The ability to knock your opponent into the ground or into the air looks a lot like toppling and launching, and the whole positioning behind for increased damage is another Xenoblade mechanic. Hell, by completing GS missions, you get a small character profile on the different people around the world, yet another feature that would return in Xenoblade. I was initially going to recommend skipping Episode 2 in much the same way as was Episode 1, but upon my second playthrough, I have to recommend this game to fans of the Xenoblade Chronicles franchise, to the origin of the character world building and battle systems they love so much today. So Xenosaga is kind of 2 for 2 with misses. Well, you know what they say, third time lucky. Come back next time as I wrap up the Xenosaga trilogy with Xenosaga Episode 3, also Sprach Zarathustra.